So, Derek, we've got an election coming up soon.
Yeah.
Here in the UK. The Scottish National Party clearly are pushing for total independence from the UK. I'm not going to ask you how you're going to vote, anything like that, but I just wondered what your thoughts are on, the whole idea of Scotland being independent from the UK.
Yeah, and it's certainly something that's been going on for some time now. I think it's more
Like
or less the
400
fact
years?
that yeah, it's the fact that Scotland as a nation, we feel like we are under the rulings of the Parliament down in London. It's we don't actually feel like we're getting our fair crack at the ball.
There seems to be growing unrest, I would say. Yes.
Yeah. My only concern is this, though: if we, as in Scotland, want to be independent, in order to get rid of one huge bureaucracy, which is Westminster, why would we then want to stay in an even bigger bureaucracy that is Europe?
Well, isn't that the whole trick? Isn't that bigger bureaucracy and the desire to remain in that bigger bureaucracy the reason why it would trigger the referendum for the Scottish people to be able to once again vote for their independence? I mean, the way I understand it is Brexit. So, okay, let me just go through a brief explanation of the way I understand it. Back in 2014, a referendum was triggered. The Scots were going to have the chance to vote for their independence. Englandshire kind of came out and did their schmoozing and did a little PR campaign, said let's stronger together, that sort of thing. The Scots ended up voting 52-48 in favor of staying in the UK, which is not a huge margin, but they voted to stay in the UK. It was close. Yeah. But at the same time, 60% of the Scottish population was voting that they wanted to remain in the EU, as opposed to the 40% who didn't really want to remain in the EU or whatever, right? Or whatever their reasoning was.
You mean when it came to the Brexit vote, 60% of Scotland wanted to stay within the EU?
The vote is that 60% of Scotland wanted to stay in the EU. That's the basis for this, right? Because that's the will of the Scottish people. Okay, they want to remain in the EU. That's what this is based on, right? To trigger this referendum. The way I understand it, I've been watching a lot of stuff. But anyway, so the whole thing that's triggering this referendum, or it's potentially going to trigger this second referendum, is because Brexit is such a drastic change and not in alignment with the majority of the Scots, and what they want. That is a drastic change in government, and that is enough to allow them to trigger another referendum so soon, because of it's a drastic change. Not necessarily because the Scottish people themselves are getting out and making their voices heard and saying, look, we're blah, 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 whatever. It's just that the drastic change in government institutes a opportunity for potentially the SNP to trigger a referendum. So the Scottish people can now go, wait, okay, they are trying to take us out of the EU. What do we want to do now? And that's the way I understand this. Now, it's being, what I can tell watching it as an outsider here from America, it's being represented in a number of ways, obviously. Propaganda from many different sides. You got propaganda from the Tories. You got propaganda from the Labour Party. You got propaganda from the Liberal Democrats there and everything. So everybody's kind of got their own spin on things, and they kind of interpret things in different ways. But the way I understand it, that the way that the rules go, that is what is happening in terms of triggering the referendum for Scottish independence. And to go one step further, if Brexit was to dissipate tomorrow and they voted Brexit was over with, we're staying in the EU, S&P would lose all the wind from their sails. I don't believe an independence vote would be even possible at that point. just by my analysis as an outsider in the recent past.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, Dave, you go.
I've got an interesting point, and this is the God's honest truth there, Eric Cozy, and this is specifically for yourself and your benefit. Since I've been old enough to vote, and in every vote that I've actually taken the time to go and participate in, I haven't actually seen any of the parties or the politicians I've voted for actually having any impact on the overall running of things here in Scotland.
Totally agree.
So my spin on it is, what level of democracy does that show for me? Do
Right.
I have a democratic opinion? Absolutely not.
Right. Well, I also agree that the way that Scottish MPs and the Scottish representation in Westminster gets treated in general only fuels the argument for Scottish independence. I mean, on that, I agree, because some of the things that like the Tories and stuff are doing over there in Westminster are shameful. I mean, if you want to, you call yourselves leaders in a democratic government, and some of the things I see coming out of the video of Westminster, I just like shake my head, just going, jaw dropped, just going,
dude.
And you call that democracy,
dude?
You know,
have you ever met a politician you can trust?
No, I can't think of one offhand. But I also haven't met a whole lot of them.
Has it occurred to you that a lot of these corrupt attorneys, they go into politics? They either become judges or they go into politics. Why?
That is an absolutely fair point. I mean, that's absolutely true.
Who are they interested in?
Themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
And
anyway.
it's almost
Sorry,
like
Derek.
when one venture runs out of fuel, they then opt to then jump ship onto the next one, which therefore leads them into. They just like being in positions of power because it gives them their own gratification, you know.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, but you got to imagine that there's some point in their past. Obviously, power corrupts, but you got to imagine that these politicians at some point in their past, where maybe there was some tragedy, that made them care deeply about something.
Yeah.
And they became a champion for that, and they began to gain notoriety for that, and they began to desire to do more good. And the thing is that at one point you reach this point where you have so many people supporting you, and you have this power, and that's where people tend to go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Is they get a little too heady with that. You know, that power gets a little too heady, and they don't know how to really deal with it. That's my opinion, and that's where politicians go wrong. But I would like to ask both of your guys' opinions, because I'm very impressed with. I mean, and look, I think politicians are crap too, for the most part. But I am very impressed with Nicola Sturgeon. I'd like to ask you two what your opinions of her are.
Well, Derek, you can go first. I've got some opinions on Nicola Sturgeon, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think she certainly has talked a good game over the years. I think the SNP, in my own opinion, I think that they've lost a bit more direction now than what they had previously. What I'm sort of looking at as overall, this next vote is going to be a really difficult one, because it's realistically what actual party is going to stop us from going out on a no deal, essentially, because I don't think it's wise to then for Brexit to be implemented without having any deal in place. I think that the whole of Europe would be taking the piss out of us if we ended up doing that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I agree. I mean, Brexit's a mess, and
of course it is, because
and that's part of what the SNP is trying to do. Is they're trying to balance the power so that the Conservative Party really can't try to just mash this down everybody's throats, and it doesn't seem to be agreeing with everybody. but yet it's still kind of being mashed down people's throats the way it looks to the outside world. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
I
had Mark on. I would say this. I had Mark on my other channel the other day, and he was actually explaining some of the real intricacies with the EU and some of the problems there, and where some of this resides with the EU, and it's because of some of the things the EU is doing that Britain wants to exit the EU. So, and he was explaining. I got to go back and watch it because sometimes those financial things and all that sort of stuff goes a little bit over my head. So I can't explain it effectively now, but he was talking about that type of stuff and how the EU is kind of shooting themselves in the foot, and they do need to make some changes in their rules to, but it's he was talking about how the EU really needs to evaluate their own rule structure, because in a large part it's some rules that need to be changed that's fueling the whole Brexit thing. And so
I'll give it a go at my explanation of this, and that is
you're supposed to tell me what your thoughts were of Nicola Sturgeon.
Yes, exactly.
I actually think she's very
Exactly.
she's very statesman-like. She's smart. She speaks reasonably.
Yeah, I have not.
And she goes toe to toe with guys like Piers Morgan, and makes him end up looking like a trained puppy. So I thought that was very, very interesting to watch. So, anyways, go ahead.
I've not met Nicola Sturgeon, but I have met David Sturgeon, is her dad, because he's of course a famous box player in Edinburgh and a stalwart of the Newton Grange Accordion and Fiddle Club.
I noticed she broadcast from Edinburgh. Anyway,
yeah, and I've got a really good picture. I must send it you of Peter Wood of De Fustra. There's a picture of him. He posted himself with Nicola Sturgeon. What I would say about the SNP, they did a very good thing for the borders. They introduced the border railway. It now means that we can get from Galashiels up to Edinburgh, and a lot of the communities on the way into Edinburgh, the suburbs, they've got this access. I think, for me, I will simply vote on the important issues that affect the Galashiels, the borders. I'm afraid that when it comes to Brexit and Scottish independence, I am not really interested in much of that. I'm more concerned with what are the local politicians going to do to help this area.
Well, let me ask you this.
Go for it.
When you say you're not really interested in it, does that imply it could go either way? You're just like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
Whether we have Brexit, whether we have Scottish independence, when I wake up the next morning, the grass is still going to be green.
Can I just say one thing though? I will say this.
Go for it.
I mean, with the way that, and by no means, folks, this is not a reason for Scottish independence. I'm just saying this for fun right now. But you realize that the way Scots are portrayed in movies and TV, and you're all very, very proud, race, or proud people and everything, Scottish independence would actually work in the favor of that image. And it would reinforce the image of, of the kind of independent and strong-willed, people that the Scots kind of are viewed as, around the world. Now, I'm not saying that's a reason for Scottish independence. Anybody, that is a frivolous ass reason, if ever. But I just wanted to say that right now.
Yeah, we don't want to cut off our nose to spite our face. But if we could point two fingers up to Englandshire, I get it. I've lived here long enough to understand that there is a people have got a long history of being England's little brother, a joint little brother with Wales and Northern Ireland, and I get that. And I think what you've got to bear in mind as well is that there's also a sense within the north of England that it's an us and them. You've got London, you've got the rest of England. You
I didn't want to say
England where they have that same feeling towards Westminster.
Yeah, I didn't want to say, but I honestly was if I was honestly, as an outsider looking in on this, was honestly thinking, I bet you it's not just the Scots and the people in Wales, and I bet you it's not just them. I'll bet you there's a lot of people who are having issues with what this conservative government's doing there in Westminster. And not that conservative government's a bad thing. I'm not. I mean, I'm not saying that it is. I'm certainly not.
Yeah.
You know, I'm as a centrist myself. I can go either way. Just depends who's got the better idea or whose plan is most likely to have the most merit and work. You know, because sometimes you want a more of a kind of a liberal attitude and stuff like that to help innovate and solve problems. Sometimes you want the conservative side as more of bean counters to be more, like manage the situation better. Sometimes it just depends on which side has the right skill set or the right set of tools to solve the problem. And for me, one side is never going to have the answer 100% of the time.
Oh no,
it's going to happen.
Forgive me there, Eric Cozy. I wasn't laughing at your comments there. I was more laughing at the comment that came up there.
Anyway, moving swiftly on. Next, sorry, I've got 3 questions. That was question number 1, Derek. Question number 2 is a very simple Edinburgh or Glasgow?
Oh, no. To be honest, I'm preferring, now that I'm closer to it, actually, I think that I'm edging towards saying, in terms of the overall of it, I think that...
Where's his off button?
I mean, I love Edinburgh.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's just, I think if you're looking at it from a working sort of point of view,
I think you're saying he's a Glaswegian at heart.
I think he's beating around the bush. I think that bush has been well and truly beaten around.
Yeah, I mean,
go on then. You can go with Ouija.
I do like the Glasgow people though.
Yes.
Anytime I've ever been through there, I mean the Ouijies, as you would call them. They're really nice people.
Yes, a lot of them are. I mean, I enjoy both. I mean, I enjoy a YouTuber who goes by Wee Scottish Lass, or she goes by Moscow Moon on Twitter. And she's actually, she actually tries to say she's between Glasgow and Edinburgh, but she clearly favors Edinburgh. And she actually talks about Glasgow being the stabby capital. Anyways, it's hilarious. But you guys, Glasgow does have some knife crime there. So I mean, it's valid. She's making valid jokes, and so anyways, I love her. She's like the Edinburgh side. I got Sharon Sunshine, who's in the chat right now. She's my girl in Glasgow. She'll even tell you about her butter knife. Pure Glaswegian to the core.
I think a very good point, Eric Cozy, if you haven't actually seen him, is Kevin Bridges, the comedian. He says in one of his actual sketches, he said, I mean, Glasgow is the one place that, I mean, if you're going to get stabbed, at least they'll have the courtesy to call you an ambulance,
That's what Wee Scottish Lass answered me with in a comment one time. She's like, yeah, of course it's the 5th friendliest city. She's like, after they stab you, they'll ask you about the weather or the latest football match while they're taking you to the hospital.
No, the thing is that last couple of years when me and Lady Eunice has been on holiday, when I've taken her ladyship abroad, we've actually flown out of Liverpool. Now Liverpool is it's an amazing place to go to. You must go there sometime because it's that mix of Scottish, Irish, English. You've got a true cosmopolitan place.
That's where John Lennon hails from.
Yeah, absolutely, John Lennon. And again, it's that. Yes, do they have crime there? Of course they do. Do they have bad crime there? Yes, But when you meet a genuine person from Glasgow, Edinburgh, Liverpool,
Yeah.
you know,
Try not to hang about at 3:00 in the morning in the back alleys, and
well, I mean, there's even parts of Southern California I would hang out at 3:00 in the morning because I might meet the werewolf himself.
if certain parts, of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we all as humans get, as it starts to get darker, we know, okay, stay away from maybe certain areas where people can't see, because we just have enough sensibility to have certain precautions as it gets darker. But obviously, yeah, dude, if I was in London, dude, somewhere where it's lit up and there's hundreds of people around, I'm feeling pretty secure in that kind of a situation. You know what I mean? So yeah. Anyway.
Yep.
I see my buddy Sharon's actually backed up my comment there, saying Glasgow's the best.
Yeah. I was actually trying to get her to go live with me and on my other channel to talk about some of the stuff that's been happening here. And she was too busy. She's been hanging her Christmas decorations all day. So it looks like she's finished and now she has time to comment at least. So hi, Sharon.
Hey, Sharon.
I love Sharon.
We love Sharon.
Sharon and I talk daily.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's lovely.